Good evening and welcome to this Seder prep. Nice to see familiar faces and new faces. For those of you joining us from wherever you are, I appreciate your taking the time and I hope this is helpful. If you're able to open your screen so we see faces, that will be wonderful. And we're more of a community of actual learners. That will be wonderful. Thank you. And as we begin, I know that we are in different places in the world right now. Taylor, who's holding our space so beautifully, thank you, Taylor, out in the Midwest. Seeing you all folks from different places of the globe. I'm coming to you from Tel Aviv tonight. And here in Tel Aviv tonight, hopefully there are no sirens. If there are sirens, I might have to interrupt our flow here and go to the shelter that's just down the hall from where I'm teaching tonight. So hopefully that's not the case. But either way, wherever we are in the world right now, if you're at home, you're in the office, if you're walking, I'm going to invite us to dedicate the next 60 seconds to really pausing, closing our eyes, feeling the feet on the ground. We've dedicated this time, and we're in the middle of a time of great turmoil, great pain, terrible suffering, and terrible uncertainty. So please turn off what you don't need right now, a window, a door, an app. Close your eyes, and let's really dedicate the merit of this time together to the liberation we seek to be part of, to holding the great hurt of so many. May this sacred silence help us hold space for all the complexities of this moment. Thank you. And so, with this friend, we're going to begin this tour de force of an hour of reimagining Seder for 2026. I will preface by saying that I recognize most of you, not all of you. I can imagine that we come from different backgrounds with different histories of how we handle the Passover Seder. For some of us, there might be a lot of history and baggage, positive, negative. For some of us, there might be new narratives or a new encounter with this holiday. Again, I don't know you all, so I don't want to make assumptions. Some of us will be at a Passover Seder this coming week, Wednesday night or Thursday night, that we are hosting. Some of us might be at Seders that we are guests at. Some of us might not have one at all. Maybe you'll be on Zoom and maybe you'll just play hooky this year. Either way, what I'm sharing with you this year, I've shared in previous years. This is my proposal, my recipe for an abbreviated, abridged Seder that honors our tradition, that honors the Passover Haggadah, but makes it a much more user-friendly, abbreviated invitation for four new questions and meaningful conversations so that we don't just recycle what we inherited, but co create a new narrative that walks the talk of our aspiration for better and our faith in a better world. Passover Seder is one of the practices that most Jews on the planet and people who love them and live with them practice. I just finished teaching a 2 hour course here in Tel Aviv for Israelis about how to make Seder meaningful in the middle of the war, in the middle of the ongoing heartache, and yet determined to be part of the change. And so I'm bringing it to you all, wherever you are in the States, with a similar invitation. What we'll do tonight is we're going to look at my Seder, Sayder, that was co-created over the years with several friends from Lab Shul and from Reboot as a way to just really cut out some of the noise and focus on the essence of Seder. What I'm about to share with you can be its own recipe for a Seder, just using these four questions and the printouts that we already have, and Taylor is going to share in a moment. Here they are already. And they could be supplements that enter the Seder, right? So you can click on what Taylor just shared, and what you have is just a one pager that has four new questions, and that might be all you need. But you might also hit the second link that Taylor just put in the chat, and that is the host guide, which might be you, or you might want to work with the hosts of the Seder so you can be part of the planning and be more thoughtful in how you bring this information, this material to the Seder or Seders. Whether your Seder is Jewish, whether it's old people, young people, all people, whether it's mixed. Um, these are invitations for actual conversations, like I said, that could be abbreviated or um, edited to be there for young people, to be there for people of all political takes and stakes, and somehow just nurture real meaningful conversations. I can't tell you how to use this. I can give you the best tools I have for how true and tried and true this recipe for four new questions helps Seders become more meaningful and used in a variety of ways. Um, because there are over 20 of us and we have less than an hour, I'm going to walk us through these four steps. I'm going to stop after each step for a couple of questions about how to utilize this step, not general questions about the situation and what do I do about my cousin who votes Trump and blah, blah, blah. Just be very practical about how we use these four steps, these four new questions. And if we have time at the end, we'll talk about general ideas about how we handle diversity and discord. How do we handle trauma at this moment? How do we bring our hearts to this conversation? Um, so I want to begin. We already modeled one tool that I really want to invite you to bring to Seder this year, which is silence. I really want to invite you as you sit down or at some point early on, once the commotion has died down and everyone has their seat, to click a glass and to invite everybody there to be thoughtful and mindful of the fact that we're in the middle of a war where there are millions of casualties of war, whether they're dead or displaced, wounded, traumatized, in Israel and Palestine, Iran, Lebanon, the Gulf, the US, and beyond. Dedicate the Seder to the intentionality of solidarity and safety, liberty, hope. So silence is one important way of beginning the Seder. We can find joy and make room for the severity and the gravity of these times. If you're sitting in this room today, you are the descendant of ancestors who've been through so much for us to be here. Seders have been observed under unspeakable situations, and who knows what's ahead. But we're here now. And so I want to invite you into this Seder, having maybe made time for silence, having welcomed everyone, and then I'm inviting you into the first question. Ma nishtana. You might have a Haggadah nearby. You might not use a Haggadah. You might just use this insert, printed out or on a screen. You might do a combination of both. Again, I have done various versions of integrating these four questions into a traditional order of Haggadah or just replacing the Haggadah with this. The Seder has, as many of you might recall, 15 stops. Starts with Kadesh, you sanctify the moment with candles, with wine. Uchat, you wash your hands. Karpas, you start eating. You start eating sushi. Tapas, don't wait to eat. And then Yachatz, you break the matzah into two, into Magid. The first piece of the storytelling, really. And that usually begins with Manishtana, the four questions that very often the youngest child asks, the Firkashas. My Seder begins from the very beginning with Kadesh by sanctifying the wine, the candles, with silence, with a peace prayer, and then I go right into the first Manishtana. And the first question on this insert is, what's new? How are we different this year? We ask ourselves and each other with tender truth, how are we different tonight from the way we were just a year ago? What has changed? Do our differences define us at this challenging time of growing gaps and polarization that divide us over political and ideological lines? What still unites us as we identify common ground and shared commitment to collective liberation? But really, this question is, what's new? How am I different? How am I different in my body, in my biography? How is my family different than last year? Did anybody die? Was anybody born? Anybody get married? Anybody get divorced? Who's around the table? So I'm going to ask you to take a minute now and think about it. Manishtana, individually, family, community, nation, people. Manishtana, how am I different on the eve of Passover 2026 that's different than when I was last year? This is an icebreaker. It's the first way to introduce each other around the table with seriousness and openness. I'm inviting you, if you feel comfortable, to put it in the chat. Here's one way I'm different than last year. And maybe you're not comfortable sharing it. That's okay. Write it for yourself. Let's take a few seconds to think about it. And if you're comfortable putting it in the chat, do so. And for those of you who just joined us, welcome. I'll walk us through the introduction in just a little bit again. But our first question is, how am I different? How are we different on the eve of this Pesach than we were last year? Okay, Elizabeth, that's a wonderful thing to celebrate, right? A new status. Last year's Seder, you were the guest. This year, you're part of the family. Beautiful. And for Frankie, 1 year into a new life at NYC. Beautiful. Mazel tovs. I feel more vulnerable on many levels, Kim says. That's very powerful as well. You know, in contrast to Frankie, I sold my house in New York City since last year. I hosted Seder there 2 years ago. This year, I sure won't. I'll also probably be sitting in a bomb shelter this year. That's new. Families traveling. Good, Ariella. Thank you. Couple more. Individually, collectively. Manishtana. How are you? How are we different? An arc towards positivity, calmer, closer to my daughter, in deeper relationship with Palestinians. Thank you, Evelyn, for all the work you're doing with your family and beyond to bring some optimism, positivity. Oh, Margie, so much more aware of our limited time and vulnerability to circumstances. Yeah. So as these come in and as these generate more thought, I'm inviting you to lift up a glass of wine or tea, mimosa, whatever you got. The Seder is intentionally centered around 4 cups of wine, and it could be anything, but it is sacred medicine, it is substance. And the idea is to lower our inhibitions, dull our senses, open our hearts, make us a little happier, maybe. There are many ways of thinking about it. Many don't drink, and that's okay as well. But I'm inviting us to toast to life, toast to difference, toast to change, toast to positivity, to healthy growth, to liberation, to all the ways we come together for better. And I won't go through the blessings right now, but there are many ways for you to make this a festive, ongoing journey with the first of 4 cups to life and change. plus being together. Chaim. And if you're following the Passover Haggadah, then yes, this is Kadesh. You've begun sanctifying the evening with candle and wine and different blessings. And Manishtana is the first round, and maybe you've washed hands and eaten the kalpas, the appetizers, and you've broken the matzah into two to introduce the mystery and the afikoman. We might get to the afikoman if we have time tonight. But most importantly, you'll get to the next question. And the next question is Magid. Magid is the part of the Haggadah which actually is most of the text of the Haggadah. Now, no surprise to most of you, the Passover story is not actually in the Haggadah. The Exodus from A to Z, hero's journey, is not in there. This is a midrash, a commentary on the story of Exodus. And here I want to say one historical note. Passover for over 1,000 years was celebrated as most ancient pilgrimages were, by the pilgrims coming to the main stage, which was the temple in Jerusalem, and there sacrificing a goat or a lamb, a baby lamb, because springtime is when those are born and are in abundance, and celebrating meat and maybe eating one of these things. It probably did not look like this. It was probably much more of a pita than a machine-made matzah. But our ancestors ate ritual food, celebrated spring, maybe talked about liberation. The story of the Exodus was not really a storytelling ritual, it was an eating celebration. And as pilgrims, they made music and danced and sang. And the priest did what the priest did, and everybody went home. But then in the year 70 CE, the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans after decades of civil war among the Jews. And that is after the other temples of our region were destroyed earlier. And so, in response to that crisis, Passover could not be celebrated in Jerusalem. There was no more temple, there was no more altar, there were no more sacrificial lambs for the sense of political and socio religious pilgrimage. And so the rabbis came up with a substitution. Passover became a home ritual. Every table became the altar. Every house holding ancestor, father, mother became priest. And the story moved to the domestic sphere. And the storytelling became the main ritual of the night, whether there was lamb or bitter herbs or matzah. And so the Haggadah, the telling of Passover, evolved over quite a few decades, probably longer, as a storytelling ritual to walk the talk from narrow to wide, from slavery to liberation, from memory to activation of hope. It's an exercise in collective optimism. And Passover, it took decades, would become a home ritual. And in order to make it easier on people, the story was written down. The steps were created from Kadesh, lift up the first cup, to break the matzah, tell the story, ask the question, so that people will be better with his pedagogy of the Passover. But then something terrible happened. The book became a must have from cover to cover. And the cover to cover must have became the Haggadah Maxwell House in its most recent reiteration that you got to read the whole thing. No, friends, forgive me, quote me, argue with me. There are other rabbis in the room. Hi, rabbis. The Haggadah does not have to be read cover to cover. It's a beautiful custom, but much of it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work for all ages. It doesn't work for all faiths. It doesn't work for everybody around a table of multi-generational cultural affinities. Some of it, yes, all of it, no. And so I say, read less, say more, prepare ahead of time, figure out what is important and what is not, as you get to the second question, the second cup, which is Magid. Okay, how do we tell the story? And so I invite you to travel with me into Avadim Hayinu, the second question. And we'll do a little exercise here. Again, this is very abbreviated because of our time. Tonight, if you look at the host guide, which is what I'm looking at, the longer document, tonight we tell a tale of liberation. Our Hebrew ancestors were oppressed for centuries before the fight for freedom, celebrated on this night, led them out of the narrow place known as Mitzrayim. What aspects, tools, strategies, and methods of this historical struggle for freedom can still shape our personal and political realities today? What new narratives can we reimagine to help move us from despair to repair? But before we even go to talk about hope, I want to talk about the story. What is the story of the Exodus? What is this narrative of enslavement and liberation? And what does it feel like to be holding a vision of enslavement right now today? How are we feeling this metaphor of being enslaved, of being in the narrow places? So, what I do here is invite us to tell the Passover story together. In the interest of time, we're going to take 5 minutes for that. It's a really fun exercise around the table, whoever is there, educated or not. There are many ways to tell the story of Passover. There's no one narrative. It doesn't begin in one spot, it doesn't end in one spot. There are many, many retellings. We're going to see what pops up tonight. So I'm going to ask you to unmute if you want to tell me, where does the Passover story begin for you tonight? Once upon a time, unmute and tell us. Where does the story begin? Don't overthink it.
The Jewish people were slaves in Egypt.
Once upon a time, thank you, Ariella, the Jewish, the Hebrew people, God knows how many and whatever, were enslaved in the land of Mitzrayim, the narrow places, Egypt. Okay, great. And then what happened? Somebody take it away. Don't make me do it. You know it. Come on.
Things got worse and they cried out.
Thank you, Eden. They were crying, they were complaining. There was the awareness of the situation, right? You move from being in it to being complaining about it and wanting change. Great. And then what?
They were abused workers who didn't have a union.
Correct. And then what happened?
They asked their enslaver to let them go.
Very nicely. They wrote petitions and protested. And then what?
And then they realized that the enslavers were themselves.
And then what?
And Pharaoh's heart was hardened.
Right. Tyranny doesn't like to be challenged. And then what? Come on. Then what?
There were magic tricks.
Go on. Give us a little more, a few more details.
Pharaoh said no and hardened his heart.
Okay. The magic tricks were not working. Nonviolent resistance did not prove very powerful. Then somebody had to step in.
Bad stuff happened. Lots of bad stuff happened.
Depends from which perspective, but yes, there was definitely resistance.
Plagues, lice, whatever.
Right.
Frogs. Yeah.
Great. Biowarfare. I'll
Moses spoke up.
All right, this guy Moses shows up. Thank you, Philip, right? There was a baby, illegal baby, smuggled through the water. Brave women hid him, saved him, raised him. He would become the face of hope, half Egyptian, half Hebrew. One day he's got a violent issue. Never mind. He runs to the desert, comes back, has a vision. Let my people go. Fights the fight. 10 plagues later, it's the night of the full moon. And the firstborn, the 10th strike, every house in Egypt has a casualty. And at that moment, the Pharaoh's heart gives up and he's like, okay, no more. My people have suffered enough. This horror needs to end. Let them go. And that is the night of the Exodus. Congratulations. You just told a version of the Passover story. Now, the second question, Avadim Hayinu, is the question of metaphor. The story of the Exodus might be history, might be mythology, we don't know. Who cares? It's been our story, our roadmap for many, 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 many centuries. And it's been the roadmap for the African American campaign to be free. And it is now the story sometimes used by Palestinians and others, right? It is a story of resilience, resistance, liberation. And it's got a lot of moral issues, shadows, and joys. My question for us, 2026, what is this metaphor of being in the narrow places? Where is enslavement on your mind today? What are we oppressed by? What is today's Pharaoh? And who is today's Moses? So I'm going to invite us to, again, think about this for a moment. With more time, we would have been broken up now into small groups, would have had, time to talk about it with each other, and at your Seder tables, you might. But right now, I want you to take a moment and think, what is this story about? Who is the Pharaoh and who is Moses? Where is liberation? Where is oppression? Whether I can talk about it or not, what am I feeling right now? What's this year's story? Take a few seconds to think about it. If you haven't spoken yet, I'm going to invite you to unmute and just share a couple of metaphors of Avadim Hayinu. Where is our enslavement feeling us today? Give it a few more seconds.
I can go. Um, yeah, it feels really complicated because the Jewish story is one of enslavement and then freedom. And I think these days I think about who are folks who are still enslaved, and then what may be my role, my people's role in that. It's like it feels like a flipped metaphor in ways,
Yeah.
or just looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. Thanks, Frankie. Definitely complicated. Avadim Hayinu, 2026. How are we the master? How are we the servant?
Mm-hmm.
How are we the Pharaoh? How are we the Moses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? You can go anywhere. It doesn't have to be political. We're enslaved by so many different ways, so many different things.
I think it's
Certainly.
also a
Yeah.
story about not just a people, but individuals within that people, that group of people, experiencing the harshness of life for however long a period of time. And at some point, either with external assistance, like assuming there were plagues and so forth happening, but more importantly, internal.
Yeah.
Finally getting either fed up or brave enough or strong enough or feeling like this transformation, I have to transform my situation individually and as a group to get out of here, whatever out of here might mean, to
Yeah.
change, to move, to go in a different direction and free myself.
Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth. So really it's the internal human saga. The ways we get stuck in our own rut, in our own mind, in our own paradigms, in our own narratives, stuck in our own head. Yeah, that's definitely one way to understand the story. I want to take a couple more.
I'm just thinking about, the Pharaoh and lacking compassion. What would have happened if he could feel compassion for the Jewish people outside his own realm? And that's so much speaks to me in today's world. The narrowness. And I think about, our people, if we could just not be so insulated and reach out and realize that we're part of this world in the 21st century. And I think there's a big fear behind that we're so used to being persecuted and we can't believe. So I'm thinking the idea of trust is really important.
Thank you, Evelyn. Absolutely. We're stuck in our own story and we lost our empathy. And if the Pharaoh's heart has hardened, how many of our people have hardened their heart because of our own suffering to the suffering of others? One more from any other realm.
I'm thinking about how trauma and the nervous system, and how when there are events where we experience trauma, our own inner, capacities can get stuck. And so new patterns can be very hard,
Mhm.
can seem beyond us even. And then I'm thinking about Moses as somebody who some would say disability, weakness of speech, and yet, this idea that leadership, our own inner leader, our ideas of who we have to be in order to do that, versus we can also have our own disability needs and still find ways with help, Aaron, whoever, symbolically, to also to break through.
Thank you. So I'm going to pause us here, folks, because here you just modeled and experienced what it's like to take the Passover story and say, I'm not minimizing its importance, its historicity, its mythology, its purpose as a roadmap. And yet I'm opening up the question of what does it mean to be in the narrow places? What does it mean to be stuck in a mindset or in a construct or in a place of enslavement to an idea, a regime, a fear, a paradigm that doesn't set me up for freedom? Is it the phones? Is it sugar? Is it how many likes on Instagram? Is it money? Is it about power? Is it about trauma, as we heard? Is it about Jewish supremacy? Is it about American supremacy? Right? And other paradigms that we now know do not serve human wellness and Jewish pride or survival. So there's a way in which we can use segments from the Haggadah here. This is the Magid. There are the four children. There are questions. There are beautiful poems and midrashim and segments. Not all of them appropriate to who might be around your table, but some are. But most importantly, this question. Avadim Hayinu. We just told the story, whatever version it is. We're going to forget someone or something, but maybe not. But what is the story about? Why does this story matter in 2026? And I'm here in Tel Aviv. I'll be observing a Seder night with Christian, Muslim, Palestinian, Jewish, Israeli activists. And we're going to talk about the occupation. We're going to talk about Gaza. We're going to talk about this war. We're going to talk about how we are enslaved by totalitarianism all over the world. And what can we do about it? So that is our invitation for our second glass. And by now we have sat around the table, we've asked questions, we've done the first few steps, Kadesh, Uchatz, Kalpas, Yachatz, Magid, we're telling the story. And then we're ready to really get into the gastro-Judaic foods if we haven't done them already. So the Magid is the second cup. Raise it up and drink whatever, refill as often as you can. And it includes eating the matzah with intentionality. What is this food that people have baked under sometimes duress for centuries that represents the most basic food staple that even that is some people's luxury and privilege today. And what does it mean to eat this matzah with intention, blessing? We take the maror, the bitter herbs, the horseradish, whatever it is we do, and we eat enough to cry. That's what I do. I ground real horseradish, and it makes me wasabi style sob. And I dare you to do the same. Feel what it's like to tear at Seder. Fake it till you make it. Real tears. And it's kind of funny, but your body goes through the somatic experience of sobbing, of crying. And there's plenty to cry for. And that is in the context of this second step. Kadesh, Uchas, Kapatz, Yachad, Magid, Rachza, Mutzi Matzah, Maror Korech, Shulchan Orech. We've eaten the matzah, the charoset, the maror, the different things, and now we're really sitting down for dinner. And even though I'm telling you, eat from the very beginning, that's what kalpas is for. By now, you've eaten, you already are having dinner, matzah ball, soup, whatever is there on the table, brisket or tofu, we're eating. Which brings us to the third question and the last segment of the theater of Seder, and that is Dayenu. I'm not saying here, you'll see it in the host notes. Bring in the songs, bring in traditions, bring on other things, bring in the afikoman at this point. I'll get back to the afikoman at the end, both steps of it. But here's when we go into the third cup of Dayenu. So look with me in the directions for the third cup. And again, in the host's guide or in the one pager for participants, what will get us to cry out enough, Dayenu, enough already, and rise up to resist oppression, cruelty, injustice, whether it's harming us or others in our orbit? How can we resist despair and lift up the brave voices that fight for human rights and justice, freedom, dignity, and love for all? Who are our modern Moses, Miriam, midwives, and leaders of liberation? So this third question is the question of Dayenu. How do we interrupt the structure of tyranny? How do we think about what we just said for Avadim Hayinu, trauma, fear, triumphalism? What are ways to say enough? What can I do this year? What is already being done that I want to support that's helping interrupt enslavement and narrowness and fear? So take another moment now. Imagine you're turning to each other and say, what's my Dayenu superpower this year? What are some ways of interrupting the horrors that are implicating so many people's lives today? So take a couple minutes, a minute, think about some ways, some people, some organizations, some voices that are doing Dayenu, so we can learn from each other. And then we'd love to hear from you. All right. What are some Dayenus? What are some ways you propose, you suggest you want to lift up the interruptions of the corruptive enslavement strategies? Sandy, hey Sandy.
Get involved in the midterm elections.
Get involved in the midterm elections. Do you have any specific tips?
Get out the vote. Find a
Okay,
find a brace and volunteer.
great. Thank you, Sandy. Absolutely. One important way, get involved in politics in any way you can. From voting to supporting to getting informed, not to wring your hands and say, there's nothing I can do. The system's fucked. It is fucked. But we gotta unfuck it. Miriam, B, letting our anger and rage of personal and collective injustice transform into the fire energy that fuels our activism. Be good firekeepers of our own flamers. Amen. Thank you for that. Huge. What else? Get concrete. What are other ways of doing Dayenu to all the ways that hold us back? Who are some people or orgs you want to lift up?
My suggestion is, or one thing I've been thinking about for myself, is focusing not also collectively the big picture and the organizations and the opportunities both for politics and for resistance through other organizations that bring people together. But I'm also like a very individual focused person, so I really appreciated and found it miraculous how wonderful the neighbors in Minneapolis were and how they stood up for individual people.
Yeah.
Trying to prevent. Everyone knows the story, so I'm not going into the story.
Yeah.
But locally here in Massachusetts, standing up for individuals who are about to be deported or picked up, going to ICE facilities and protesting, whether it saves them or not, they know that you do that, and that's why I think that for me, I like that individual focus so that individuals know others are standing up for them.
Thank you. Here, here. And I'm looking for Jenny's comment. Look for the truth. That is one Dayenu. Hard. because there's so many fakes and multiple narratives. What else? How do you interrupt online addiction? How do you interrupt despair? How do you interrupt doom scrolling?
Put the phone away.
Okay, more easily said than done, but okay.
Well, say like 5 o'clock or whatever time, that's it. No more phone for the evening.
Okay, thank you. Mariella?
Create some kind of like a Shabbos bag or a place where you can put it.
You mean shove it. Got it. Thank you, Ariella. And I see Jane's comment, protest visibly often, boycott the tech giants. You can trim those subscription, reduce streaming services, right? These are all practical ways to say no to the capitalist obstruction of freedom and liberty. And think, eat more horseradish and cry, or whatever helps you connect to your grief. Very helpful. Grief work, really important. Absolutely. So again, because of time, I'm going to interrupt us, but I'm going to say the Dayenu cycle, and don't forget to don't skip singing Dayenu is one way to really say like, okay, here's a story of Passover. It wouldn't have happened if Moses wouldn't stop to meditate and look at the bush and say, wow, some things change. It wouldn't happen if the Pharaoh's princess, Batya, didn't stop to do civic interference and disobedience and save the baby. It wouldn't have happened if the midwives didn't find cunning ways of making sure more babies are born, etc., etc. There are ways to do Dayenu. Sometimes they're safe, sometimes they're risky. But what does it take for us to say, no, this thing is not making me happy? What I'm eating, what I'm consuming, how I'm living, what I'm believing, what I am or not doing. Dayenu. It's a great cycle. And by now we've done through Kadesh, Ulchatz, Karpas, Echatz, Magid, Rachza, Mutzi, Matzah, Tzafun, Barech, Halel, Nirtzah. We're wrapping up the Seder. So here, I want to take 5 minutes and walk you through the Afikomen. So the Afikomen was an invention when the Roman style Seder was invented to bring dessert into the mindset, but also as a game, to hide a half a matzah from the very beginning of Seder, from Yachat, the fourth step, so that it is delivered or discovered at the end of the Seder. Many of you know it. It's a way to keep the kids engaged. You hide half a matzah, whatever the kid wants, the kid gets when they discover the matzah. I'm putting it in a different way. Kadesh uchaz karpas yachatz at the very beginning. You cut the matzah into two. You hide one half. You show the other half. It's to demonstrate that we're now in split screen. Reality, mystery, what I see, what I don't. That is life. And then I ask people, and you can see that on the last page of your handout for hosts, I ask people to make a list of organizations that are helping promote justice and freedom and liberty. And people write them down or share the thing. It depends on what is the observance. Around the Passover table, you can come up with a list right now from the New Israel Fund and Planned Parenthood and Rabbis for Human Rights and whatever, a billion things that are promoting life, liberty, well-being in the US, in the world, here, etc. We list those lists, we hide the matzah, and we pass around a hat, a matzah box, or a phone with pledges where people put down money to end the narrowness of whatever is stopping us from being who we are. And then we go through the rest of Seder, second question, third question, we get to the fourth question. Before we open the door to prophecy, whether that's Elijah, Miriam, Dr. King, whoever your Heschel prophet of choice is for the week, for the year, for the night. And then we see if anybody stole the afikoman. Anybody found the matzah? Renee found the matzah. Great. Renee now gets to be rewarded for her sleuth work. And look at the list of organizations we all put together that are promoting justice, freedom, and joy. And Renee decides that she puts the money that we collected as a group into one of the organizations. And with that, as soon as Seder is over the next day, whether Renee is 10 years old or older, she takes the money, we organize how to do it, and calls the organization and said, a bunch of people just collected money so you can keep on doing your work. I cannot tell you how satisfying it's been over the years to have children, teens, adults walk out of a Seder with the pledge of $1,000 or $10,000, less, more, and then choose to help organizations do their work for freedom and collective liberation. So the Afrikomen, really good way to get people to think about our agency and not just our despair. Afrikomen is on your sheet. Brings us to the fourth and last question. Next year when the Seder was created, it was about Jerusalem as the promise of the future, the city of peace, the potential of homeland, of no exile, of no persecution, of the old days back again. Jerusalem is here, it's struggling, and it's always a metaphor. So this is a chance for political imagination, for creative visioning. Imagine Passover 2027, a year from now, as we end the Seder with dreaming of peace, singing praises. What do you want to see a year from now? Give me a wild, radical vision of a way better world. Take a second, think about it. It's a really fun thing to ask around the table. Don't hold back. This is wishful thinking. Got one? Give us a vision. We're opening the door to prophecy and we become the prophets. Don't hold back. Philip, what you got?
The funeral of Donald Trump and Mr. Putin.
Okay, wow, you're cheerful. Okay, I will take Kim's Trump under investigation by a new Democratic Congress. Philip wants them dead. That's fine. True reconciliation. The midterm elections changed the trajectory of our country and world. Amen. Bibi is out of office, big time. No Netanyahu. There's a coalition of central organizations and leaders to end the occupation and sign the peace deal.
For me, the whole world holding hands around the whole world. One big table.
Not holding back. Amen, Evelyn. Gaza is being rebuilt with an autonomous government that is making sure it's really reconstructed. Ukraine-Russia war over. Somehow we've blocked the climate crisis with the genius of scientists. And the Pope just appointed the first woman archbishop in the Catholic Diocese of China. Shit like that. Keep them coming. I don't care. You end the night on crazy, radical, imaginative wishes. And we sing a song next year in the dreamland of our hopes. And then you keep on singing Passover and other songs. And you have already done 4 cups and beyond. And you've eaten a lot of chocolate and whatever. And good night. Liberation. Check. You've brought in silence, you've brought in songs, you've brought in 4 new questions, and most importantly, you've created a transformative conversation over just reading the past. You've become part of history by making history, by interrupting the narratives of same as and creating an as if, as a what if. That's my recipe. And let me quickly recap what it is, and then if there are any questions. So, friends, I'm inviting you into Seder. Read less, say more. 4 new questions to animate Passover 2026. Whether your Seder is Jewish, whether you're the host, whether you're a guest, whether it's going to be people who agree on everything or do not. We're taking this ancient ritual, hundreds of generations old, and breathing new life into it, but by asking 4 new questions. integrate it into your Haggadah or replacing your Haggadah or any kind of combination. The first question, Manishtana, how are we different? We begin the Seder with the first cup and the first question, and you turn to each other and say, how am I different? What's new this year than it was last year, personally, politically, family, community, nation, world? Manishtana, what's new? We get to the second question and the second cup after already beginning to eat, and that is Avadim Hayinu. What's the Passover story? What's the metaphor of the move from the narrow places to the wide? What about Moses and Pharaoh, and what does that mean today? Who is the Moses? What is the Pharaoh? Where are we and how are we enslaved? How are we contracted? How are we complicit? What is the story about in 2026? That could be rough, but real. And it moves to the third question. Avadim Hayinu leads into Dayenu. If this is the problem, what is the solution? What is the Dayenu? Enough already. What can I do to make things better, to improve, to change, to liberate? Who's doing the work? Let's talk about that. What is Dayenu power to help us move on? And finally, the fourth and last question with which we end the Seder, political imagination, creative visioning. How am I better next year? What can look like next year when we really put our resources and the energy towards collective liberation and towards transformation and change? Throughout the night, these questions animate eating and drinking, tears and laughter, trauma into transformation. Say more, read less. Happy Passover. That's the whole recipe right here and there. So, with that, we got 5 minutes for questions about what you still want to learn about bringing meaning into your Seder in 2026, however and wherever you will be. We won't have time for all of them, but at least for a couple. Or whether you have feedback or notes or thoughts, that's good too. Yeah, Frankie.
Can I hop in? Thank you so much, Amihai. This was awesome. I love the say or read less, say more. Do you see a need for a Haggadah like that's passed around, or not needed
It
if we're having
depends.
more?
It depends on your Seder. Some people are attached to the beauty and the poetry of the Haggadah, and they like some of it, if not all of it. It's there as an educational tool that we've inherited from hundreds of years ago. So I'll have some there because people are going to might read some bits, but I'm not going to use it as my main text. It's just going to be something I refer to.
Do you have any favorites that you might recommend?
Honestly,
Okay.
too many to count.
Too many to
But
count. Okay.
but just find the ones with the most egalitarian and updated translation. Find the
Okay.
one with the art that doesn't take the triumphalism as its guidepost, but thinks a little more elastically about empathy. And thankfully, there are ones with a lot of commentary that include more than the usual voices. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that beautiful comment, Elizabeth. That absolutely was a Seder, and you can have as many as possible. Tonight begins, and there'll be more on maybe Wednesday night and Thursday night, and maybe throughout the week, right? It's a week in which we get to really walk our talk and feed each other with kernels of optimism.
I think music at the Seder is important and singing
Absolutely. Yeah.
for the children when the children are there and just for the spirit, for lifting the spirit. And
100%. The songs are super important, just like the recipes that are handed down. Think of the songs you want to sing, hand out the words, make sure somebody knows how to lead them. Just the mere joy of singing together around the table. How often do we do that? Absolutely. And again, think of who's around your Seder, old, young, different ways. Make sure you involve everybody there. The song that I opened, Sandy, Taylor can put it. It's from an obscure band that I found that does some weak, wacky versions of different pieces of music. So friends, with that, we're going to end in just a couple of minutes. I want to end as we began by taking some seconds for silence to ground ourselves in this moment. as war ravages worldwide, and we might be very far away from it or deep in it. We might be very privileged to sit around tables with food and joy, with relatives and friends, yet just a few feet away from us, there are those who have none of these things. So, how can we spend the next few days thinking of who to invite or who to include, how to make the Seder a recipe for optimism and renewal and repair, and also a place for honest conversations, reflection, and growth? Who can benefit from our generosity in the next few days? So many people are in need of resources and optimism. And who can we share this link with, this new Seder? Other people who might find it helpful to bring these questions into their Seder. May this year bring us the hope and the memory, the agency and the collective commitment to liberation in all its forms for all people. May we walk the talk, following the crumb trail that we inherited towards a better way of being in the world. Not just recycle history, create a new page. Thank you for joining me for this pre-Passover Seder prep. If there are any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We will share this recording with our community. And I hope you have meaningful, delicious, and inspiring Seders wherever you are. Thank you, Taylor, for holding our space. Thank you all for joining. Laila Tov. Peace will prevail, justice and joy. I look forward to seeing you soon in person in much better days. Take care, friends. Chag Sameach. Liberty to all. Good night.